Okay, hello and welcome to what is now the sixth instalment in our BTS Career Pathways podcast series. My name is Alex Langhorn and I head up the business support team here at BTS. And BTS, as some of our listeners may know, is a training provider specialising in the CII regulated exams, otherwise known as the RO exams, that lead us to the Diploma in Regulated Financial Planning. And as such, we are really privileged to work with thousands of aspiring financial planners, advisors, paraplanners, and administrators, and all sorts of other roles in between as well, as they take on their first steps towards qualification. So to give a bit of a background to the BTS Career Pathways podcast series, in each episode, we take a different lens to explore some of the challenges and successes experienced by both new entrants and those that are more established in the profession. And over the next 40 minutes, the topic that we're going to be discussing is getting in and getting on in a career in financial planning, with the focus on the experience of women in financial services. And joining me to share their insights on the subject, I have three fabulous guests. I'm delighted to introduce, first of all, Chloe Phillips. She's a chartered financial planner, fellow of the PFS, and co-founder and mentor at the Paraplanner Club. Welcome, Chloe. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to have lots of time, hopefully, to hear from you over the course of the session. But just by way of an introduction, I mentioned a couple of your roles there. How would you describe your current roles? What is it you do at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So at the moment, I've recently transitioned. So in the last 12 months, I've transitioned into a client-facing chartered financial planner. And so I now look after clients, around 40 clients, and providing them peace of mind with their finances, and giving them a really great service. And also with that, I co-founded the Paraplanner Club with Caine and David Cole, who you may have heard of, in January 2021. And the reason why we started the Paraplanner Club was to provide mentoring, a free mentoring scheme for people within the profession that are either trying to enter into the paraplanning profession, or they've increased and they're going into like a managerial role or something like that. And the reason why we created the Paraplanner Club was because, I think paraplanners as a whole is such a big, it's a role, but it's very dependent on the business that you're in and what those business needs are. And a lot of paraplanners, some of them are on their own, and it's providing that sounding board, to help them to have someone to speak to and to help them within their paraplanning journey.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chloe. Mentoring is so important, isn't it? It's a big piece of the puzzle, I think. And for yourself as well, to have started out, it's 15 years paraplanner and then making the switch over.
Yeah, so it's not fully 15 years as a paraplanner. So I actually started within pensions administration.
Right, okay.
I fell into the industry, I think, like many others. I had no intention to go into university whatsoever. I just wanted to get out into the world and actually make some money. And I say that now with confidence, but I know at one point I was actually quite embarrassed that I didn't go to university.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was quite, when people ask you, it's like there is an expectation that you've been to university, and then if you haven't, it's sometimes I think it can have you a little bit on the back foot.
Mm. Yeah,
that's my personal experience.
Okay, thank you. Alongside Chloe, I'm also joined by Emmelia Davidson-Slack. I know, Emmelia, you're fairly recently qualified financial planner. Was it last year you gained your DipPFS?
Yeah, it was last year that I finished my qualifications.
Oh, congratulations, huge achievement. And now you're also, you hold the post of the new professionals officer at the PFS. Same question to you, really, then. How would you describe a slightly different perspective to Chloe being such a new entrant, but also you've got your PFS hat on as well? How would you describe your current role?
So just going off the back of what Chloe said, I did fall into the industry. It was something that appealed to me with having 3 young children. And actually, my mum set up her own business. It was a leap of faith from her. And I snowballed off the back of that and saw an opportunity for flexible working and something that I could do and still be primary caregiver for the girls. So I think it's interesting. My role encompasses everything and anything. I don't really think I could write a job description. but the intention is that I complete my CAS training. I'm kind of going straight to the financial advisor qualification. I'm really enjoying paraplanning though. I really like that part of the role. And I've had conversations with people just playing devil's advocate, saying, why aren't paraplanners earning the same as advisors? They have to know everything. They have to do everything. Their role can be so demanding. And even though they don't wear the accountability hat, ultimately they are accountable for a lot of the contents of things that are produced. So, I mean, I understand why there is a pay discrepancy there, but I do just like to ask those questions and see why people think there is maybe little gaps. But yeah, I enjoy my role. I do lots of report writing, lots of comparisons on investments, protection, speaking to clients, a little bit of everything really. And then the new professional officer's role is new. I'm trying to support people in the same position that I am, either paraplanners, administrators, whatever role that sort of financial services you play. Yeah, just give them the support they need, help them with contacts, make them feel welcome at events that we attend, maybe just connect the dots, and be a support arm really.
Fantastic. So such a giving sector, I think. We've got Chloe, a mentor, yourself, new professionals officer supporting new people coming in. It's just such a great sector to work in when you've got people giving so freely, which is really nice to hear. Alongside Chloe and Emmelia, we've got Tamsin Caine joining us, who is also Chartered Financial Planner and Fellow of the PFS. Now, Tamsin, you've got a really interesting job title, Resolution Accredited Divorce Specialist, but also Director of Financial Planning at Smart Financial. That sounds like a really niche specialism. What does your role look like?
It's quite a niche. It forms part of, the bit of the business is called Smart Divorce, and it forms part of Smart Financial, for which I'm the overall Director of Financial Planning, which means that I'm the lead planner for the majority of our clients. I feel like the old head in this group today, because I've been in financial services a long time. But yeah, like the other two ladies, I absolutely fell into it, had no intention of coming into financial planning, started off as a mortgage advisor, and kind of worked my way through into my current role.
And this is something we hear time and time again. We've done quite a few of the career pathways sessions now for lots of different topics, but it's so common to hear that people fall into the role, which is really interesting. So we might explore that a little bit more as we progress. So three fabulous guests, three fabulous women with such a range of professional experiences between you. Thank you so much for joining us today. One of the objectives of the Career Pathways sessions is to share real stories, real career stories from real people. And today we're discussing women in financial services specifically. Now, that's not to say that everything that we talk about today is unique to the female experience. However, we believe there is a huge value in providing a platform to share real lived experiences from a range of demographic groups, with the aim of providing, should we say, relatable content for listeners who might be recognizing some of their own experiences in those stories. And one of the first questions I think it's important to address in this session on women in finance is the topic of women in finance still relevant in 2022? So for the basis of a bit of research that I was doing before we put the session together, a very recent PFS report from 2022 states that only 16% of FAs in the UK are women, which is quite shocking for me to see the statistic be that low. I knew it was going to be low, but that was incredibly low. So I'm going to ask each of my guests for their perspective on this. Coming first to Chloe. Is it, in your experience, financial planning still a male-dominated profession, as that statistic would suggest?
Yes. So when you've said that, the first thing I think of is my experience to a conference for the first time. And I think from a sea, and it was literally a sea of men within the audience. And I think I could count on one hand, the amount of women that were in the room. That was my first experience. And I'd probably say that was 10 years ago now. And then even though I feel people are doing things to make it better, so I've recently gone to another like a breakfast seminar on the morning in the last few weeks, and even then I was still the only woman in the room. And but the thing is that I didn't notice it straight away. It wasn't until halfway through the session I was thinking, oh, hang on a second, I'm the only woman here. It's not, I say I stick out like a sore thumb, but yeah, it's definitely something I notice. But when I think of the reasons why, we think about women and having a family. So, I've got a young son, Henry, who's he's approaching his 3rd birthday this month, and I've transitioned recently to a financial planner, so I understand, going to see clients and everything else. But from a autonomy and being able to take Henry to nursery, that is hugely important to me as a mum. And the fact is for me to find a firm that is happy for me to be able to take Henry to nursery and everything else. And I know I'm going off a little bit of a tangent here, but when I was in my earlier 20s, for instance, I was made redundant from Aviva, which was my first role in York, where I'm from. And there's a running joke that if you're from York, you've worked at Aviva at some point, because it is such a large head office and everything else. But there was no other opportunities within York, within the financial services profession. So I had to look further afield. So the next place was Leeds. And so my next role was in pensions administration within Leeds. And my commuting time, it used to probably take around an hour on a good day, maybe sometimes an hour and a half if trains were cancelled or whatever else was going on. And I was reflecting recently and I was thinking that would just not work in my life now with being a mum. And I think with COVID and everything as well, it's that opportunity now to work from home and that flexibility has just made things a lot quicker.
Emmelia, you're also a working mum. And obviously the focus of today isn't just to look at the motherhood experience, because that in itself is a topic that could take another session as well, couldn't it? But from your experience as a new entrant, what's your experience been? It has your view been that it's a male-dominated profession, or have you had a different experience?
A lot of what Chloe just says resonates. It's quite easy to go off on a tangent when you explore why is it male-dominated, because I agree my quite limited exposure to financial services, it is male. We are fitting into that stereotypical category of, ethnicity and age. And but I have gone into a company with my mum who must have been in the industry, I'm not going to do her injustice, but over 30 years. And yeah, it's something that she's experienced too. Now, whether that actually disadvantages you on your career path, I don't know. I'd like to think not. But whether you disadvantage yourself because of the moral dilemma you have being a mother, which no, I'm not saying a father is a different kind of role, but for most mothers, there is that element of dependency on your children the same way they depend on you. I want and need to be there for everything my children do. I'm fortunate enough that my role is totally flexible, which means I do have bags under my eyes because I work late till night, because I want to walk to school and pick them up. But in summary, yes, I think it's male dominated, whether it's because women are denied or whether women find it very hard to juggle both a role in whatever industry and being a mother. I did my exams and qualifications whilst being pregnant and breastfeeding a newborn. It was hard work, but I'm relatively focused on I am focused on where I want to get to. Working now, my partner is away. His job is our living, our livelihood. So that is priority. And I just find what I can, the scraps to make a living. And it's just the balance of our lifestyle. So Yeah, sometimes it's circumstance that leads women to just step back and think, I can't, which is a shame. And I don't really know how you would address that, because it's just a role we fulfill as mums.
Okay. Thanks, Emmelia. Some really honest insights there into that topic of motherhood, which, as I said, could be a whole session in itself, couldn't it? Motherhood and the financial services. But it does highlight some of the things within, maybe stereotypes within the sector. There's lots of stereotypes at play there. Is it flexible enough for a woman who wants to be able to do that role? So there's lots of things coming out there. Tamsin, I'm going to come over to you now for a second, because we do hear that the number of women in financial services is steadily rising. And I think the fact that people like Chloe and Emmelia are out there doing what they're doing shows this. It is possible for people with different commitments to come into the sector and thrive. And obviously, as we look at the statistics, we see that rise is occurring. But in terms of senior leadership roles, that is where it really doesn't seem to have kept pace. So some of the stats I was looking at earlier today were that only 5% of CEO board members globally are women. 21% of board seats globally are women. So that statistic isn't keeping pace with the women entering the profession. And as I'd say, okay, to say a senior leader yourself, Tamsin, would you say that it is the case that there isn't that growth of women in leadership positions?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I think I don't know if those statistics are just for financial services companies, and if they are, I suspect you're taking into account other sorts of financial services companies, like the Avivas that Chloe mentioned before. And I think that potentially when women join the financial services profession, particularly in financial planning, they want to help clients directly. They want to be involved. I've known Emmelia's mum for a really long time, and she's a fantastic advocate for women in our profession, and certainly has helped a lot of people out over her time, and it has been incredibly successful. So there are not a shortage of women doing the job in working directly with clients in senior roles. They do tend to go and start their own businesses, because actually, if you want to be able to go and look after your children in a way that Emmelia's just, talked about, going to pick them up from school. I mean, when I started as a financial planner, my daughter was 1 and my son was 2. I did all my professional exams when they were tiny. I'd put them to bed and then get my books out and start studying, and see the other 2 ladies nodding away. So this is obviously a familiar story to them. Mine are 17 and 18 now, so it is a different story for me. There is a lot more flexibility in my life, but this working from home works well for me. I was here at home while my son was sitting his A-levels. I could be here and make sure that he was he was eating properly whilst he had his head in the books, and those sorts of things are really valuable. However, from whether you walking to pick your kids up from school or whether you want to be there to support them, it is that flexibility that's really important. And I think in terms of senior leadership roles, I don't think it particularly suits women to be sat in an office all day. If you want that flexibility about trying to balance the unpaid role of a mother and the paid role of working in financial planning. In terms of what I've seen over the course of my career in financial planning, I would say that my experience in going to seminars was very similar to what Chloe was talking about. You walk into a room, you're the only woman, or you're one of a handful in a room of 150 odd men in suits. I would say that that's still the case if you go to certain types of events, particularly the events that perhaps draw the more traditional IFAs. What I would say is if you go to the events that draw more of the next gen financial planning demographic, they'll actually that then turns around completely. So the Nucleus events, the recent Next Gen conference, you're probably looking at around about 1/3 of the audience being women, and perhaps 2/3 men. And I also, just a bit of a hat tip to Charlotte Wood at this point, because she created Empowered, a couple of years ago. I'm on the team that now runs Empowered with her. And she's really trying to make a massive difference for women in the profession, and you know, make them shout a bit louder and make them explain to the men in the profession what we do struggle with, and things that ought to change and can change, and that, you know, there are lots of us out there doing a really good job.
Thank you, Tamsin. I mean, just to return to Empowered, and the Empowered Live Conference is a fantastic event for women in finance, and it looks at so many different topics and so many different definitions of what it means to be a woman in financial planning. So really, such an inclusive event. So we'll definitely share details of that with our audiences when those are released. What I'm hearing across all of the answers there is there's definitely common threads, which I'm sure everybody listening can pick out themselves. But one of the things that struck me was this need for representation in different arenas. And leadership is one. And that was the question that I posed initially, was about female representation in leadership. But we've also looked at events and people attending events, panels of speakers at events and things like that. And representation is such an important thing. There's a phenomenon referred to as the multiplier effect, in that if you have somebody like you on a panel in a leadership position, you are then more likely to want to be able to progress in that way yourself. So it's about showing a wider demographic in leadership. And obviously being female is one aspect of that. There are lots of other elements to it as well. So Tamsin, something that I want to come back to you again, something that you mentioned when we were chatting earlier was about recognising the contribution that women can make that might be different to the contribution that men make within the sector. And I know that you're involved in skills training for advisors. Would you say there's a difference between masculine and feminine skill sets?
Yes. I probably shouldn't say that, but yeah, I do think there is. Obviously, I work a large proportion of my time with people who are going through divorce, and a lot of people assume that therefore I work only with women, and that's absolutely not the case, because sometimes men want the skills that women have in this area just as much as women do. And I think the area of empathy is a particular skill that women have that this is a sweeping generalization, and I'm not saying every single man is no good at empathy and every single woman is, but I think generally, broadly speaking, you will find that women have a slightly softer approach. So if you've got clients who are going through traumatic experiences, then it's quite often helpful to have a lighter touch. I also think that there is still a divide. I know I mentioned it before, between the traditional IFA and the financial planner, and I think we need to get better at explaining what the difference is and at calling ourselves what we actually are. And there's nothing wrong with being an IFA, a traditional IFA, and there's nothing wrong with or right with being a financial planner. They're two different job roles though, and they're two different skill sets, I think. With the traditional IFA role, I think it is more of a sales role, it is more of a product-based role. Whereas I think financial planning, you're looking at the client's entire life, and I think there is a different skill set involved. There are softer skills required. There's a need to listen and to get to know your client's whole life rather than just arranging what product they need at that time.
Yeah, it's really, again, a difficult, challenging conversation to have, isn't it? Because it's so hard not to make sweeping generalizations, and that's certainly not what we're about today. It's about recognizing nuances and things that might be specific to certain women, things that people could relate to. There's some great work being done in terms of the mentoring and the things like Empowered, which is allowing those stories to be told. And I hope also having this session where we've had some really successful women chat about their own challenges of bringing up children, and not doing that in a way that they feel they need to make an excuse for. It is a reality. You are a whole package when you do a role. You're not just you in your day job. You are a human being with all the bits that go with that, whether that's children or other caring responsibilities, not specific to men or women. It's perhaps about having changing the stereotypes within the sector so that the person doing the role is an entire person. the divide perhaps between home and work isn't so stark potentially. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the importance of having women in the public view who bring with them other aspects of their life and show that it is possible. It's a valued addition to who you are as a person. It's not something that has to be kept undercover in order to progress and be successful. Thinking about it from things like professional bodies like the PFS and the CII, one of their roles is to look at being representative of the public, of the people that we serve in the sector. And some of the statistics, again, they can paint all sorts of pictures, aren't they? So you've got to be really careful with them. But some pieces that are flying around at the moment suggesting how the client base, if you like, is going to be changing over the coming years. I've come across things like 2/3 of household spending is going to be controlled by women by 2030. 70% of the total global wealth is going to be inherited by women over the next 2 generations. And the one that struck me, 53% of UK millionaires will be women by 2025. So on the one hand, we've talked about how the statistics in the profession don't seem to be where we thought they were. They were perhaps below, lagging behind. When you look at actually wealth distribution and control of finances, the clients that we serve, there seems to be much more of a balance, if not tipping heavily towards female control there. Just opening this one to opinions from anybody, really, all three of my guests. What are your thoughts on that in terms of the clients that we serve, the profession that we work within, and that picture that we're being presented about the female distribution of wealth going forward? What are your initial thoughts on that? Does anybody fancy tackling that one first?
Go on, I'll jump in.
Go on, thanks, Tamsin.
I think that sounds like dates in the future to me. And it's absolutely not my experience at present. And there may be a number of reasons for that. One of them will be obviously the sector that I work in. But my experience is that the majority of the women that I work with, and it's not all, but it is the majority, are the lesser financially experienced and capable and educated of the couple. And it, as I say, this is a generalization. It's not all women, because I can tell you it certainly wasn't in my marriage. I was the financially more capable of the two of us. But it is often the case that the guy will take control of the money. I think the other situation is all around women and investing, and there's a massive amount out there on this subject at the moment. To know that there's an account called I think it's called Rain Check, that's on Instagram, and they're talking a lot about women in investing and the difficulty that women have with thinking longer term. You tend to concentrate on the here and now and making sure your kids have got absolutely everything that they need, and your needs to an extent get put on a back burner. It's much more difficult to think longer term, and women have a hesitation to invest and to understand that there are risks by not investing just as much as there are risks from investing. So I think there's a huge education piece, and maybe we're not seeing so many women in those situations that you've just described because they don't necessarily come and see financial planners. Maybe we need to make ourselves more accessible and more approachable as a profession. I think in the wider community, there is still a feeling that you go and see a financial advisor or a financial planner, you're going to see a salesman in a shiny suit who wants to overcharge you something for doing something that you could find out how to do on Google. Now, we know that that's not the case, but I think there is still work to do within the wider community to get our message out there that we're not all like that, and that actually we can make a massive difference to our lives, because we've spent a huge amount of time studying our evenings away and getting qualifications to be able to help people live their best life. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking that's perhaps coming from.
Yeah, interesting. Chloe, would you add anything to that?
I'm in agreement with Tamsin, really. So the figures that you're saying, I would like to know what it's actually based on and where those numbers have come from, because, like you said, it's in the future, I do agree. It is a huge educational piece. And we just need to educate people and, educate women and everything else. And I've even, for an example of recently speaking to a client and making her aware about just like the state pension as an example. And people assume they're just going to get the state pension and it's just a given. And they don't understand that actually, no, you need to have qualifying national insurance contributions for a minimum of 10, maximum of 35 to get the maximum. But because she chose not to work, and then her partner was earning over 50,000, they didn't actually receive the child benefit. So then she wasn't actually receiving the credit she needed. But she wasn't aware of that. So it's simple things like that as an educational piece is, even if somebody is earning over that threshold where they are getting that high child benefit tax charge, is still to claim that credit for the woman that's choosing not to work. And again, that might not be somebody that's actually seeking financial advice, but it's having that available to people. Because if I speak to somebody about it, I'm thinking if, when you go and have in the hair, having my hair done and I'm speaking, people just aren't aware of those things. And they just sometimes put their head in the sand because they find it a very difficult topic. And if you say pension, then what is a pension? Do you mean my workplace pension, my state pension, the private pension? And they all mean completely different things, but the pension to somebody is just one thing. And, they avoid talking about it, learn about it more because to them it's a lot, 30 years away. But obviously the earlier the start, the easier it is.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's something like women are more likely to suffer a pension deficit than men statistically. And the same with insurance as well. They're more likely to be or underinsured than the male counterparts. So absolutely, the topic of women in finance goes beyond just women entering the profession and actually looks at the client group, the client demographic that we're serving as well. What are some good examples of change in the profession that you've seen or experienced relating to the topic of women entering the profession? So I'll come back to Emmelia first of all. Have you got a good news story, if you like?
A good news story of a woman in the industry?
Yes.
Oh, it's going to have to be a shout out to my mum.
I had a feeling it might be.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, I've almost gone in and become my mum in some ways. And as a child, she didn't have this balance that myself and Chloe and Tamsin now have been really fortunate to have. Her commute was an hour and a half into Manchester. She went into that mail office and she worked really hard. But as a consequence of that, me and my sister were looked after a lot by our grandparents and we had fantastic relationships with them. But it wasn't my mum doing pick up and drop off. There was very few occasions she was really able to be there as she would have liked to. And when I went on to have children, she said, I just really want to be able to see those years, potentially in the ways that I didn't see it with you and your sister. And I kind of reflected on that before I entered the industry. And I thought, that's really sad. You worked really hard, but I suppose at a loss of just memories, which are precious. But in other ways, she has given me drive, determination, the motivation to absolutely excel. She's everything in a role model I could ever wish for in her glamorous and very, very professional way. She's done incredible. So, we give ourselves a hard time thinking as mums, we want to be everything. And sorry, there's always reference to being a mother, being a woman, because we all are on the call. But I've learned so much from her that I don't think she aimed to teach me, but she has taught me. And that was that I wanted to work and I wanted to be successful. And I have consequently actually followed in her footsteps. But she's a really positive ambassador for women and for women in financial services. And I would say the ladies that I've been introduced to on the call, both have absolutely excelled in their profession. My obviously I've had a limited exposure to financial services. So that's what I would go off as it currently is.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's a lovely story, Emmelia. And I know your mum does a lot of amazing work for the PFS, for the profession as well. And it's really an open door as well for anybody who wants to share ideas of how we can be more inclusive. So she is indeed a great advocate. Chloe, do you have a good news story that we can sort of round off the call with, that looks at some of the positives, that things that are changing maybe for women?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from my personal point of view, and and it's being that finding that company that works for you and being part of that change as well, because there are some really good businesses out there, and the company that I work for now are a new company, and they're called Pure Financial Planning, and they absolutely get it of is that financial, yes, we are financial planners, but we also have a family. And why do we work? Yes, we might be working to help others within, the clients we serve, but at the same time, we have families and we want to make a better life for us and our family as well. And it's finding that balance. And that's where I am. I finally found that company. I think that get it, and hopefully can drive that forward in the future as well with others.
Lovely, thank you, Chloe. And finally, Tamsin, final word coming to you. What would your closing thoughts be in terms of positive change that you're seeing in the profession?
I think mine would be a shout out to some of the amazing women that are in our profession, that are real role models for those of us out there. I'm thinking of people like Sharon Sutton, who chaired the PFS practitioner panel, otherwise known as Power. I'm thinking of Ruth Sturkey, who's recently taken over, I think, as chair of the financial wellbeing group. I'm thinking of Tina Weeks, who runs an incredible course called Know Thyself. There are some fantastic women out there. Charlotte, of course, from Running Empowered. There are some brilliant role models out there. I think there's been a couple Chartered Financial Planners of the Year in the last couple of years who've been women. We are 51% it's not a niche. Dealing with women is not a niche. Having women involved in these roles is not a niche. And
thank you, Tamsin. It's nice to end on some positives and some thoughts for how we can continue to make a difference. I've really enjoyed talking to all three of you on this session. But if anybody would like to contact any of the guests in any way, what would be the most appropriate channel for them to reach out to you? Coming first to, should we go back to Emmelia first of all? If somebody wanted to get in touch, what would be the best way to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. So I think you'll document the names of all of us anyway. My name's a pretty long one. There's not many Emelias with the same name. And through the company website, which is Premier Wealth Solutions, you could find contact details for me and my mum. Two different people with different journeys, I suppose. So, and we would be more than happy to help anybody that needed some support or just to chat. We both like chatting, so we could chat for a while.
Oh, thank you, Emmelia. And Chloe, if somebody wanted to get in touch with yourself or indeed the Paraplanner Club, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can contact me directly either through LinkedIn or you can go through the Paraplanner Club website. So that's the paraplannerclub.co.uk. And, same as what Emmelia said, if there's something that resonated with you, what we're chatting about today, reach out. We can grab a coffee over Zoom and have a conversation. I'm here to be a sounding board. Like I said, might not have all the answers, but if I don't have the answer to what your question is, I can always help you and point you in the right direction. And I think that as well is that us welcoming them conversations, because sometimes people, I think, are afraid to reach out.
Thank you.
Just encouraging that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chloe. And finally, Tamsin, if somebody did wanted to get in touch with yourself, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, similarly, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Wow.
Not made it to TikTok yet. All my reels. Yeah. Anyway, yes, pretty much any of the social medias you can find me on. And again, like the other ladies have said, it'd be lovely to hear from anybody who wants to have a chat, virtual coffee. Feel free to ask me whatever. Might not have the answers, but I'm sure I can find somebody who does.
Oh, wonderful. Such generous offers of giving back, as we've seen across all of the sessions on the BTS Career Pathways so far. So really, really grateful to all three of you for joining the session. And that's where we're going to leave the topic for now. Thank you all very much for your time.